Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Folks, we are living in the midst of a giant teachable moment. This is how it happens. This is how fake news takes root and becomes the narrative, becomes the daily script of the Inside the Beltway soap opera written by the drive-by media. This whole business of Russia hacking our election is fake news with the imprimatur of intelligence agencies and the CIA, and it's brought to us by the same newspapers that tried to take out Richard Nixon. And if I didn't know better, I would say that they are trying to relive the moment and Watergate Donald Trump. Greetings, great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. Looking forward to having you hear what I have to say today. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, we'll check the email as well. That address, if you want to reach out via email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. This is exactly how it happens. All weekend long, I was doing what I always do. I combine leisure work and leisure and work, and I'm doing show prep while engaging in leisure time activities and so forth. Well, I will even, on the golf course, do show prep. If you're playing with some slow people, have time to check the phone, maybe see something printed to the printer at work, and you're done. As I got here today and began to assemble everything I'd collected over the weekend, I ended up with 2 stacks. Sometimes I end up with 4 stacks, and each stack is organized by either news type, be it hard news, heavy news, lighthearted news, or subject. In this case, the 2 stacks are organized by virtue of subject and everything else, because the everything else only's got 4 or 5 pages in it. And the other stack, which is the CIA and the Washington Post, New York Times saying that the Russians hacked the election, 90% of everything I printed over the weekend. And I got here and I started organizing, and this is it. This is exactly how it happens. And it's even though Trump has won, even though Hillary has been vanquished, even though the left has suffered defeat after defeat after defeat, the drive-by media is still there. And they're still acting as they always do. They are setting the agenda. They are setting the narrative, establishing it, and they are determining what everybody talks about. And today, because of this, I found myself asking myself, should I play this game today or not? Should I treat this the way I've been treating it for all the years I've been doing the program? And that is to react to it, to go on defense, to explain how the lies stack up here, to explain the BS. And I think I've got no choice, and that's I don't know if it's a problem or if it's just the way it is. Fake news is the order of the day. Fake news. A story first on Saturday and then on Sunday. Washington Post and New York Times, that intelligence sources, it turns out to be unnamed, a couple people, we don't know who, no specifics, alleging that the Russians left fingerprints as they hacked the 2016 election. We're also told that the Russians hacked both the RNC and the DNC, and one of the controversies is, why didn't WikiLeaks use any of the stuff they got from the hack of the Republicans? And that is being used to suggest that the fix was in from Russia against Hillary, because they had equal data on the Republicans, and they just decided not to use it. There's one problem with that. And we have audio soundbite support on this coming up as the program unfolds. The RNC says it was not hacked. Reince Priebus. You know, I got a little lazy at pronouncing his name on Friday, and I had 2 or 3 people I'm certain who are in Reince's orb send me an email saying, no, it's pronounced Reince, not Rince. I said, I know it's Reince. It just, when I'm speaking quickly, it just came out Rince. I was not trying to be funny or insulting. I like Reince. He's come by here. We've had some chats. So no, don't misunderstand. But Priebus, he was on Meet the Press with F. Chuck Todd yesterday. And he had to almost scream at Chuck Todd 3 times before Chuck got it. Chuck, we were not hacked. We weren't hacked, Chuck. And Chuck kept going, and finally Reince said, what are you not getting about this? And Chuck says, it's not about me. It's not, Chuck, it is about you, and it's about everybody else in the media. This story is totally about you. It's about the New York Times. It's about the Washington Post. It's about everybody appearing on every cable network that'll take them from either of these newspapers or sympathetic to these newspapers, pushing this false narrative. One element of the story, a major element, has proven to be untrue. The Republicans were not hacked. So if you find a serious element of the story that isn't true, the rest of it ought to be held at arm's length and viewed with lots of suspicion. But it's uncanny, folks. The media is behaving according to type. The media is doing the only thing they know how to do. They are doing everything they can to take Trump out. That's what this is about, folks. And for those of you who think that the recount efforts and the intimidation of electors is sort of a screwball bunch of people over, it may well be, but they are trying to prevent Trump being elected. There is nothing half-hearted about this as far as their desires and purpose is concerned. They're seriously trying to do this. And when I throw the word Watergate Trump out, I'm not doing so casually. This is exactly what the Washington Post, and Carl Bernstein, by the way, of Watergate fame, is back in the mix now, saying that Trump is even worse than Nixon. Well, that's like a dog whistle. That's like code language, because Nixon is the worst. Nixon, everybody supposedly agrees. Nixon was just, ooh, yuck. Trump's worse than Nixon, according to one of the revered and respected Watergate journalists. The other Watergate journalist, Bob Woodward, is who broke the story in the Washington Post about the intelligence agencies claiming that they have evidence that the Russians attempted to interfere in the United States election. So the linkage to Watergate and its modus operandi is clearly established. The two primary journalist players are actively engaged now, as is their newspaper, the Washington Post, and their compatriots at the New York Times. Question is, how many people are going to see this for what it is? It's not going to slow Trump down. The one different factor here is that Trump is not the Republicans. And Trump is not acting scared. And Trump, when he tweeted last night, he watched the NBC Nightly News. He tweeted it was embarrassing. It was horrible. It was bad. Trump is not going to be deterred. He's not going to be stopped. He's not going to be intimidated. And he's not going to be affected by this in terms of the way it makes him behave. There's so much going on. They're upset about Rex Tillerson. They're upset about the fact that really what this is all about is they can't yet accept that they lost. All of this is based on that. It really, I mean, there are degrees of depth in terms of their anger and dissociation and unhinged derangement. But it's all about that. They cannot believe they lost. They all believed themselves when they cited their polling data and read their stories that Hillary had this in a lock. And so it's something that they just can't accept. So there has to have been some cheating, because the American people would not have voted them down. The American people were loving Obama and were loving what Obama was doing. And American people love the Democrats, and illegal immigrants love the Democrats. Everybody loves the Democrats. This is just not should have happened. But as we will attempt to establish as the program unfolds, and I'm not going to ramrod this through you. I'll take some time going through this. I've worked up a number of different ways to express my thoughts on this. Plus, we have support, audio soundbite-wise. The Washington Post and the New York Times on Russia's interference in the election is total BS, and it is the definition of fake news. Some hack somewhere in the intelligence community, may not even be the CIA, but it's, there are a number of different intelligence agencies. There's CIA, there's the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. State Department has its own little group of people. They're intel people all over the place, so we don't know. But one of them decided to call Bob Woodward and fill old Bob's head full of notions. So the Washington Post writes a totally anonymously and anemically sourced story that the New York Times immediately follows up. And it becomes a huge story that attempts to delegitimize Trump's win, delegitimizes the election. And now you've got all of these Washington Post people populating cable news networks, downplaying the FBI's conclusion, no evidence Russia did any such thing. James Comey already addressed this in his Hillary press conference. He said there was no evidence that Russia hacked anything, including her server. Remember? He said there's no evidence the Russians even hacked Hillary's server. Barack Obama on November 26th told everybody, grow up and stop whining. He was talking to Trump. Stop whining. That's when, Trump was victorious. Just stop whining about the election. Stop whining about it. Nobody interfered. That's Obama. Not all that long ago. What they have is maybe some evidence that a hacker from Eastern Europe hacked the DNC emails. That's it. But the New York Times and the Washington Post report that the Republicans were also hacked, and Reince Priebus says they were not. They looked. They've had people examining their computer systems for months. They have not been hacked. You think it's any coincidence now that Dingy Harry is demanding an investigation into this? And as I checked the blogs, conservative blogs, they're all saying, why, of course we need to investigate this. Why, this is an outrageous charge. If there's something to it, we need to look. So that everybody thinks the proper thing to say and do is to acknowledge that this could be bad and we need to have an investigation. If you are of the mind to stand, no, this doesn't deserve an investigation. This is totally media fake news, made up media fake news. We don't need an investigation. They're going to climb down your throat and they're going to try to destroy you because the meme, the narrative now is, this is how it's always worked. The Republicans get intimidated into agreeing with whatever contention the drive-by media puts out. In this case, it's the Russians hacked the election. It could have been fraudulent. The result could be illegitimate. And, of course, the Republicans on cue, oh, yes, Lindsey Graham and John McCain. That's right. We should investigate this private hacked. My campaign was hacked in 2006. It can happen. Yeah, it can happen. So everybody's now on board with we need to investigate. We need to roll up the sleeves and find out what happened. And, of course, who's leading this? The Democrats are leading this, and the media is leading this. And the usual suspect Republicans are eager to sign on, hoping to show the media and the Democrats that they're mature and reasonable in all this. The only guy still at this moment who's acting like he won is Donald Trump and everybody in his orbit. This is how easy it has been for the media working with the Democrat Party to delegitimize any significantly good thing that happens that does not involve the Democrat Party. But Trump is the difference here. Trump goes to the Army-Navy game. It's in Baltimore at M&T Bank Stadium. You see this? When Trump's introduced, he's up there in a box. He spent time in two boxes. He spent half the game over in Ollie North's box. Ollie is a Marine, but he goes to the Army-Navy game, a Navy guy. And somebody else's box, I forget, some other major player, a guy that does deals. That's who Trump likes, guys that do deals. That's why he likes Tillerson. Tillerson does deals. Does big deals, mega deals all over the world. He's a deal maker. He's a player. Trump loves him. He's a good guy. I like Tillerson. I think the name. I just love Rex Tillerson. What a great name for a guy running an oil company. Anyway, 75,000 people at that stadium. The vast majority of them give Trump a standing ovation. 100 protesters bought and paid for by communist-related organizations marching in protest outside. What do you think a lead story in the media is? The 100 people protesting outside the stadium. And today the number's been elevated to 200 people. I guess it didn't get enough bang for the buck that there were 100 people outside, 75,000 inside. The 100 people outside protesting and carrying anti-Trump signs got all the attention. And now their numbers have been elevated and inflated to the fact that there were 200 of them. So, they're even CNN. I think it's Little Brian. I'm not sure Little Brian. So somebody at CNN even suggested maybe we need to do the election over. Meanwhile, Jill Stein was just told to go pound sand for the third time, this time in Pennsylvania. So the Electoral College is the only thing they've got left other than this. Now, we need to have an in-depth, well, not that in-depth, but there's a couple of points I need to make about intel agencies and how you deal with them if you are president. I think Trump might have made his first big mistake in this. Not an everlasting, damaging mistake. This little tactical error. I'm not sure that I'm right, but I'll explain. We've got a lot of things to detail for you here after having set the table. But you see the pattern. This is the tried and true media way of delegitimizing, destroying, impugning, discrediting Republicans for as long as we have all been alive. This is fake news. Just like the video at Benghazi was responsible for what happened there. Look how that took hold. Took hold. The guy that did the videos in jail. This is how fake news happens. The Washington Post and the New York Times are the biggest perpetrators of fake news in this country today, and they're on display with it now. I tell you, I cannot wait for this program to unfold because I'm gonna obliterate these people today and their claims that this election was hacked and that's why Hillary Clinton lost. I'm just going to blow this to smithereens, and it's going to happen in the next half hour. At least that's when I'm going to get started doing this. My friends, who actually is trying to change the outcome of the election? Well, I got an example. Robert B. Reich, the former labor secretary for Bill Clinton, claiming that he's received phone calls from 3 electors who say they have doubts that Trump should be chosen by the Electoral College. Reich says they are telling him they've been in contact with other electors who feel the same way. The Democrat Party has mounted an all-out effort to have electors in the states, in some cases, violate state law and not vote for Donald Trump. And you got the Jill Stein recount, which has essentially been shut down anywhere she's tried. Who is it doing this? Who's actually trying to change the outcome of an election? Who is claiming that it was hacked, and who is claiming that everything is so unjust that we need to change the outcome? It's the Democrat Party trying to change the outcome of the election. It's the Democrat Party tampering with election results. It's the childlike Democrat Party and the American left who simply can't come to grips with the fact that they were rejected and repudiated and blown out. Merry Christmas to one and all. The best of the Christmas season to one and all from all of us here, the EIB Network. A little bit about this Washington Post story that started everything. It's a third-hand account. A third-hand account, third-hand source, that the Washington Post even acknowledges that wasn't the Russian government that did the hacking. How many of you who have paid attention to this story all weekend long and this morning, how many of you think the story is that the Russian government hacked our election? Vladimir Putin directed the Russian government to hack. Whatever they hacked. What do you think they hacked? What did they do? Did they hack voting machines? Did they hack paper ballots? Did they hack the DNC emails of Podesta? What was that? You don't even know, because it doesn't matter. The thing that matters, that what the drive-bys have put out there, is that Vladimir Putin and the Russians hacked the election because they wanted Trump to win, because Putin is scared to death of Hillary Clinton. But he loves Trump because Trump's a lackey, and Trump likes Putin, and the Russians will be able to have their way all over the world because Trump is such an idiot. That's the story, right? That's what you know. If you have just been a news consumer since, say, anytime Saturday through this morning, that's what you know. That's what you think you know, that the Russians hacked the election. The Russians. That's not even what the Washington Post story says. The Washington Post story acknowledges that it's a third-hand account that they're relying on, was not actually the Russian government that did the hacking. Here is the actual passage. Intelligence agencies do not... I'm reading from the Washington Post here. You listen to this and contrast it with what you have been told, what you have heard, seen, read in the news. Intelligence agencies do not have specific intelligence showing officials in the Kremlin directing the identified individuals to pass the Democratic emails to WikiLeaks, a second senior U.S. official said. Those actors, according to the official, were one step removed from the Russian government rather than government employees. Whoa. Wait a minute. So why does somebody think the Russian government had anything to do with this? When the story, the newspaper that everybody's relying on this, says that it wasn't the Russian government, that it was a third-hand source. And then what we're talking about here is the Podesta emails being leaked to WikiLeaks. That's not tampering with the election. And by the way, not a single one of those emails has been denied. Podesta, Hillary, you name it, not a single person has said anything in those Podesta emails that were leaked was not true. That's not the point, Mr. Limbaugh. The point, Mr. Limbaugh, is that these were private communications with Democrat strategists, that they were leaked and not everybody knew what was going on. Well, not first time something like that's happened. But is that tampering with the election? Some people might look at that as the truth being revealed. What did we learn in these hacks? We learned that it was the Hillary campaign buying and paying people to disrupt and cause violence at Donald Trump rallies. We learned that a guy responsible for this, his name, we learned his name is Robert Kramer. We learned he's married to a Democrat congresswoman from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky. And it was apparently so true that the guy quit. The guy resigned in shame. I mean, everything we've learned here happened to be true. How is this affecting the outcome of the election? Most people think, when they hear Russians hack the election, that they tampered with the ballots. They tampered with... There's two. You cast ballots and you count them. So what was the hack? Did the Russians hack the counting process? Did they hack the casting of ballots process? What did they do? Well, nothing, because nothing has been alleged along those lines. But you wouldn't know it paying attention to the drive-by media, the Washington Post or the New York Times. The Post story has no evidence, nor do they have even an indication of any evidence that supports the claim that the Russian government tampered with our election. That's from the paper itself. Now contrast that with what you're hearing. They got their headline. The headline has nothing to do with the details contained in the story. The fake news was in the headline, and everybody ran with the headline and ran with the premise that the Russian government, from Putin on down, tampered with the election in order to sabotage Hillary Clinton. Let's go to the audio sound bites. Reince Priebus took Chuck Todd to school yesterday. Chuck didn't know it for a while. We have, I think, 3 bites on this. This is Meet the Depressed, as it turns out. F. Chuck Todd says to Reince Priebus, does Donald Trump have confidence in America's intelligence?
Of course he has confidence, but we don't have confidence in the New York Times releasing a report of unnamed sources of some kind of study that itself, in the Washington Post, said was inconclusive, to claim that because the CIA had hacked emails of the DNC and the RNC and only used DNC emails, that meant that Russia was trying to influence the election. Because the other piece of this, Chuck, is that the RNC was absolutely not hacked. Number one, we had the FBI in the RNC. We've been working with the FBI.
Why?
We've had intelligence experts here.
Wait, hang on,
Chuck. No, the RNC
explain why
was
you
not,
had the FBI
was
there.
not hacked.
Well, then why was
Because
the FBI involved?
When the DNC was hacked, we called the FBI, and they came in to help us. And they came in to review what we were doing, and through our systems, went through every single thing that we did. We went through this for a month, and we were not hacked. So wait a second. If we were not hacked, and that is absolutely not true, then where does that story lie?
Right, it's a great question. Because the premise is, in this story, and the New York Times picked it up, that the Russians hacked both the RNC and the DNC, but that they unfairly only used data from the DNC. Isn't that not fair? It's not fair. And it proves that the Russians hacked and that they wanted Trump to win. And Priebus is telling, no, Chuck, you're laboring under a false conclusion. We were not hacked. Which means the story is wrong about that, which ought to raise questions along the lines of what else in the story might be factually incorrect. Chuck Todd, still not getting it, though, continued.
Not a single person connected to the RNC was hacked. No Republican vendor who had interactions with the RNC network was hacked. You guys have had a very specific denial that the RNC's network wasn't hacked. That doesn't mean Republicans associated with the RNC weren't hacked. That doesn't rule that out. Do you categorically rule that out?
So you see what Chuck is doing there. So Priebus in the first bite. Now listen to me. This is an object lesson in how this works. You learn this, you'll learn to spot it down the road. You won't need me to explain it to you. So Priebus points out unequivocally and categorically to Chuck Todd that the RNC was not hacked. This doesn't compute for Chuck because Chuck has conducted this interview under the auspices, according to a belief that both parties were hacked, but that the Russians only released Democrat-hacked data and therefore were wanting Trump to win. So Priebus says, no, Chuck, we were not hacked. That destroys the entire premise and narrative that Chuck and the drive-bys have come up with. So after Priebus says, we weren't hacked, Chuck says, really? Not a single person? No Republican vendor? Nobody that prints pamphlets and bumper stickers? You mean not a single person that does anything with the Republicans was hacked? Not a single person all across the country? That doesn't mean that Republicans associated with the RNC weren't hacked. He's desperate. He is desperate to have his audience believe that Priebus is lying. When Priebus says the RNC wasn't hacked, Chuck says, oh, come on. Maybe the guys that printed your bumper stickers were hacked. Maybe the guys that printed your pamphlets. Maybe the guys running your phone back. How could you be sure, Reince, that you weren't hacked? And Priebus maintains they were not hacked, that the FBI came in. So Chuck still is not quite understanding what's going on, or he does and is trying to salvage it. Here is the next and final bite.
I don't know why you're so hot about this. I mean, the fact of the matter is you should actually be happy that the RNC wasn't hacked.
Well, no,
the RNC was not hacked, okay. Chuck. I don't know of any employee on any of their own Gmail accounts that was hacked. So what I'm trying to tell you is the RNC was not hacked, number one. That was the specific allegation that was made in the actual New York Times article. The article didn't say affiliates of the RNC. Okay. No, wait a second, Chuck. The article said the RNC was hacked. So don't be defensive with me. I'm refuting the specific fact that was made in the article to create this entire firestorm. And the specific fact, as we've been told by the FBI repeatedly, including 2 days ago when we checked back with them about this issue, repeated the fact that the RNC was not hacked. So you tell me where this story is at. Why would the press run with something that wasn't true?
because they're creating fake news. They create a false narrative that both parties were hacked, but whatever was learned about the Republicans was not used because the Russians didn't want Trump to lose. They wanted Trump to win. And so with Priebus telling Chuck Todd, no, we weren't hacked, it destroys their entire fake news narrative. Just destroys it. So Chuck's getting afraid. You heard him say, wait a minute, this is not about me. It is, Chuck. That's the whole point. It is about you. This whole election was about you. It continues to be about you. And everybody else in the media, it is totally about you. And what's becoming clear is that the media is incapable, folks, of changing. They're not even able to practice deceit. They only know their one way of destroying Republicans, and they're engaging in it again here. And that's why I'm not speaking lightly when I say they're trying to Watergate Trump. You got Bernstein involved. You got Woodward involved. You got both newspapers, the Washington Post and the New York Times. Trump's not even in office yet, and Bernstein's out there saying that Trump is worse than Nixon. And the Russians hacking the election. It wasn't that long ago the Democrat Party loved the Russians. The Democrat Party loved the Soviet Union. I'm going to remind you. We were the first to, quote-unquote, break the story years ago of Ted Kennedy working with the Soviets to undermine Ronald Reagan in an election. The Democrat Party and the Soviet communists, the Russians or whatever, they have been blood brothers. And they were as recently as, don't forget Obama telling Dmitry Medvedev, you tell Vlad, this is in fall of 2012, you tell Vlad, be patient, I'll have a lot more flexibility after I beat Romney and win re-election. He's talking about getting rid of our nuclear weapons arsenal. This is the regime that's been in bed with Putin. This is the regime, Hillary Clinton with a cheap plastic red reset button. I must take a brief timeout, my friends. We have much more straight ahead here on the EIB Network, just kicking off a brand new week of broadcast excellence right here. Okay, I want to ask some questions about Vladimir Putin and his competence, because the Democrats and the drive-bys are claiming that Putin involved himself in our election illegally. He interceded, and his desire was for Hillary Clinton to win. He wanted Trump to win. Trump wanted Hillary to lose. So I have some questions about things. We know here from the WikiLeaks dump about Democrat meddling. Robert Kramer previously explained hiring at $1,500 per person people to disrupt Trump rallies and cause violence. Donna Brazile giving the questions to Hillary in a series of debates. But I have questions about this. Did Vladimir Putin secretly persuade Hillary Clinton to take off most of August? Did Vladimir Putin tell Hillary, you don't need to go to Wisconsin. You got it in the bag. You don't need to go to these blue wall states. You own them, Hillary. Don't waste your time. In fact, Hillary, you don't even need to campaign. Just sit there and recuperate. You don't need to even leave your house, Hillary. Did Vladimir Putin drug Hillary Clinton, causing her to collapse into a van and have a seizure on 9/11? Did Putin secretly tell Trump where to go and do his campaign right in the middle of the urban core? Did Putin tell Trump to make a pitch for votes based on an economic message of jobs, 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 and make America great again? Did Putin do all that? Did Putin come up with Trump's campaign slogan? Did Putin secretly cut a deal with that babe on Saturday Night Live to portray Hillary Clinton to millennials as an unlikable, power-hungry, humorless robot politician? Did Putin tell Trump, go out there and spend all kinds of money and hold all these rallies? You do all these rallies and just get thousands of people showing up at these rallies. You just keep shouting, make America great again, make America safe again. Did Putin secretly fund Robert Kramer? Did he make Obama meet with Kramer and Black Lives Matter all those times in the White House? Did Putin run out there and tell the Democrat Party to base their election on transgender bathrooms and same-sex marriage and Black Lives Matter and the cops deserve to be shot and all the other things the Democrat Party stood for? Did Putin do that? Was Putin responsible for the campaign strategy of the Democrat Party? Was Vladimir Putin responsible for Donald Trump's campaign strategy? Did Putin secretly influence this election so Donald Trump would put a bunch of warrior generals in positions of high responsibility in the U.S. military? You telling me that Vladimir Putin wants a bunch of George Patton-type people in our cabinet? You telling me that's what Vladimir Putin wanted and he cheated this election so that that's what Trump would do? Versus a woman who would continue the disarmament policies of her predecessor, Barack Hussein Obama, who thinks that the nuclear arsenal of the United States posed the greatest threat to freedom in the world, and so we had to downsize. You think Putin wants a Trump and all these great military guys? Or would he have preferred to have Hillary, who was going to disarm the United States anyway? This Putin, I'll tell you, folks, he's one sneaky, ingenious SOB the way he pulled all this off. He had to be a brilliant guy for the Clinton campaign to be so special, kind of stupid the way they lost this election. Did Vladimir Putin tell Hillary Clinton to pile up all those votes in California in New York instead of focusing on electoral battleground states? When did Vladimir Putin tell Hillary Clinton to call half the country deplorables? Man, oh man, what power Putin has. Back in a second, folks. Greetings, welcome back, my friends. It's El Rushbo, the all-knowing, all-caring, all-sensing, all-feeling, essentially the all-everything Maharishi. And as usual, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Phone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. It's just classic. It's just right out of the playbook, this entire so-called news story. This is the epitome of fake news. And it is the blueprint, folks, for how the media has always sought, working with each other, to destroy, take out, damage, impugn Republicans. And it's always, well, not always, pretty close to always worked, if not immediately over time. Took them 5 years to destroy Bush. It took them, how long before they really got onto Watergate before Nixon resigned? A year and a half? Almost 2 years. Trump is the difference here in the equation. He simply is going to laugh at them and throw it right back in their face, and he's going to continue dealing directly with the American people. But I mean, I'm trying to expand on my thought process here. Since I was putting the program together, show prep, this morning after getting here, the way I work is I constantly am, life is show prep. If I find something that I want to make sure that I talk about, I print it to one of the two printers here sitting behind me. And then I promptly forget it, always looking forward. When I get here the next day, I continue doing that, and then about an hour before the program, I grab everything in that printer, and I start organizing it. Some of it I've forgotten. Oh, yeah, I go. God, yeah, can't wait for this to come up. Others don't care anymore, throw it away. So doing that today, sometimes I end up with 4 stacks, depending on the category or maybe a single news story. Or today there's just 2 stacks, and 90% of everything I printed is in one stack, and it's this Intel story that the intelligence agencies say the Russians hacked the election. And as I was putting it all together, it dawned on me, this is it. This is exactly how they try to destroy Trump during the campaign. It's the way they do business. And they are fake news. And so I've got this stack, and I said, okay, what do I have to do with this? Okay, again, what's happened? I have awakened, I've gotten to work, and I see things and people I believe in under assault with a bunch of lies, with a bunch of distortions, and I have to roll up the sleeves and refute it and defend against it. Now, in a microcosm way, this is an explanation for why we haven't been able to gain much ground as the opposition, because this has been the way of the world for most days since I've been doing this. Every day we wake up and we have to mount a defense against the latest assault, mostly fraudulent, mostly fake, to defend the people and the causes we believe in. And they never stop. And because we spend so much time defending, we don't have time to advance the ball, if you will, and move forward. All of that's changed now with Trump. Trump is moving the ball forward, he's advancing, and he's not paying any attention to these people, and he's not letting what they do affect what he does. And they are smoking mad about that. They are fuming. They are used, I'm talking about the media, they are used to being able to control the agenda of both their friends and their enemies, their buddies and their opponents. And Trump doesn't play by their rules because Trump is not afraid of them. And Trump knows that he doesn't need them. And that's the big equalizer. Unlike most Republicans who think they can't get anywhere without at least some favorable treatment in the media, or at least less criticism from the media, Trump doesn't need the media. He's got his Twitter account and he's got his rallies. By the way, he's going back to Hershey, Pennsylvania. That was the site of one of the biggest Trump rallies in the campaign. So he's going to go back there on his thank you tour. He's got that, and he's got his agenda. He's got his cabinet selections, and he is totally on offense. And they're trying to take him off offense, put him on defense. And the whole objective here is to, in as many minds as possible, the media is trying to create the idea that Trump's election was not legitimate. That is the result of trickery and fakery, that Hillary should have won this thing, and they keep focusing on the popular vote. That's why they're spending so much time encouraging these recount efforts and the intimidation of the electors' efforts that are underway out there. Because make no mistake, this is not a bunch of extremists who are not really part of the Democrat Party mainstream trying to run this recount and trying to intimidate the electors. This is the Democrat Party. There is no fringe in the Democrat Party. They are all extreme radical leftists, socialists, neocons, whatever you want to call them. And what you're seeing, no matter where you look, if it's Jill Stein, if it's some of these wackos they find to carry the water on hassling and harassing the electors, it's mainstream. It is the mainstream of the left, the Democrat Party. It isn't their fringe. And they are expressly attempting to change the outcome of this election. This Washington Post story, I read it when it hit Saturday. Drudge headlined it. That's the first place I saw it. Then I saw that the New York Times had a follow-up. And it immediately stunk to me. But see, I'm a student of this stuff. I know how these people think and how they operate. I know what their modus operandi is. I know what their pattern is. I know how they write stories, what their objectives are, what the headlines are. I know everything about how they do it. And this one just stunk to high heaven. It was obviously fake news from the get-go. Now, it involves the intelligence agencies. And one of the things that Trump did was he took some shots at the intelligence community in his initial reaction to this. And that may be, and I'm not totally decided yet on this, but that may be his first big mistake. Let's review some things we know or think we know about the intel community. Now, this next, I was thinking about this walking back in the studio here from the break at the top of the hour. I may have this one 180 degrees out of phase. The Central Command, which runs Afghanistan and the Middle East, the war on terror in the region, and then the war with ISIS. Obama's out saying one thing or another about ISIS. Somebody revealed that the intelligence on ISIS had been cooked. Do you recall this? That Obama was out saying that we were containing ISIS, that they were losing badly, we were winning, we were driving them back, they were disintegrating. And then somebody came in, no. That intel was cooked. Meaning it was modified to make Obama look good. Now, I happen to believe that the intelligence community under Obama has been politicized because I think everything under Obama has been politicized. One institution after another that the American people used to be able to rely on or trust have all fallen, I think, and have all become populated by extreme leftist radicals who are the mainstream of the Democrat Party. I don't care what agency, FDA, EPA, Department of Education, Homeland Security, you name it. Obama has people there who think exactly like he does. And in this sense, that means he's got people in there who think America is the problem in the world and who think America needs to be chopped down in size, that America needs to learn a lesson or two, that America deserves some reciprocity. America needs to find out what it feels like to lose. America needs to find out what it feels like to have people just walk all over you, trample you, because in Obama's worldview, this is what the United States has been guilty of since our founding. Let's examine weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. George W. Bush spent 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, traveling this country, speech after speech after speech, explaining his policy, the run-up to war with Iraq, what it would take for Saddam Hussein to avoid war. 2 years. He went around the country explaining it to the American people. He gave them his options. He told them what would trigger it, what could stop it or pause it. And it was all Saddam Hussein. It was up to him. If Hussein came clean with his stocks of weapons of mass destruction, if Hussein came clean, we could all avoid all of this. But following 9/11, Bush said, we've got no choice. When we have intel that bad actors around the world might be planning attacks against us, we're not going to wait anymore for the attacks to happen. We're going to take preventative action. And part and parcel of this was that intelligence agencies all over the world, folks, not just ours, MI6 in the UK, the CIA, the DIA, the State Department IA, all of these intelligence agencies, Pakistani, allied security agencies, intel agencies around the world, every one of them, concluded that there were weapons of mass destruction, that Hussein was lying to the weapons inspectors from the United Nations. Recall this? And then that ill-fated day when Colonel Powell went to the United Nations complete with spy satellites, photos showing the installations. Everybody believed Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein was not denying it. Saddam Hussein was saying, yep, I got him, and I'm going to take you out. It's going to be the mother of all battles. Hussein reveled in being the leader of anti-U.S. sentiment in the Arab world. Hussein never thought we would actually invade. Even after the Gulf War, He never thought Bush would do it. So he was huffing and puffing. And then, of course, we invaded and didn't find any weapons of mass destruction. But intelligence agencies all over the world confirmed they were there. Bush didn't make it up. Colin Powell still hasn't gotten over the humiliation, I don't believe. Okay, so what happened? Do we know? Who lied to who? Did the intelligence agencies not tell Bush there were weapons of mass destruction and Bush ignored them and said there were? Or did the intelligence agencies tell Bush and assure Bush over and over for 2 years, yep, they're there? Were they there and are they in Syria now? We still don't really know. What we do know is that George W. Bush's approval numbers ended up around 30% as a result of all of this. My understanding, my theory, is that quote-unquote intelligence people, who by definition are unknown and work in secret, can undermine anybody if they set their mind to it. They can promote anybody. They can make anybody they want look good. They can undermine. They can lie to a president. Mr. Limbaugh, I can't believe you're saying that. These are some of the most patriotic people. I know. I totally get it. But don't tell me that the CIA isn't politicized when everything the hell else is, particularly with this administration. You know, shortly after an election where a major upset happens and the Democrat Party cannot yet come to grips with it, we have two newspapers, the Washington Post, New York Times, we have the Watergate reporters, Woodward and Bernstein, and we've got leaks from unknown people in the intelligence age that the Russians hacked, and the Democrats have been pushing this narrative since the summer. The Russians were out there hacking ever since Podesta's emails ended up at WikiLeaks. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks said the Russians are not the source. We didn't get... John Bolton's out there saying, you know what? These things could all be coming under a false flag. Bolton, who Trump really likes, by the way, I understand, Bolton is thinking that, hey, we can't rule out that all of this is coming from the Obama administration. We can't rule out that this is a false flag. That, in other words... Investigators claim that they have found Russian fingerprints in the DNC computers. Really? Why would the Russians leave evidence? If the Russians go fishing in their hacking in the DNC computer, why leave evidence? Doesn't it make sense that if you find Russian fingerprints as evidence of a hack that it's not the Russians? Or... are you deranged and a leftist and you think, no, the Russians did it and they want us to know they did it? They're taunting us. Putin hates us. People will twist themselves into all sorts of positions to have what their biases are confirmed. Biases. But aside from all that, so the weapons of mass destruction in Bush, and then whatever was the... It was a bunch of whistleblowers about what happened at Central Command, and I'm not sure. I'm just confused. I'm going to have to double check this. Either the intel was cooked and Obama was told ISIS was no big deal, or the intel was cooked and Obama was told it is a big deal and we're beating it back. I'm going to have to refresh my memory on it. But James Comey said that Hillary's server was hacked by foreign operators. But the Russians didn't leave behind any fingerprints in any of their other hacks. They only left fingerprints, supposedly, in the DNC hack. Again, the bottom line. Folks, this is total fake news. The whole thing here's fake news. The way it's been reported, the way it's effervesced and bubbled up, the way everybody's now reacting to it and responding to it. Look at it, owns the news cycle. And I'm really ticked off that I'm having to spend time on it because it means I'm falling prey to it. Want to grab a quick phone call? Suzanne is here with us, Wichita, Kansas. Hey, Suzanne, what's up? How are you?
It's a pleasure to speak with you, Russ. I just wanted to say I find this imaginary concern by the left really rich because Obama's State Department sent 2 grants, the taxpayer money, to anti-Netanyahu organizations in 2015 trying to prevent Netanyahu from getting elected. It was all under the guise.
Yeah. It wasn't just that. It wasn't just the money. Obama sent people over there to run the campaign of Netanyahu's opponent. That's interfering in a foreign election, isn't it?
And there's no outrage from the left on that, nor was there an investigation by the CIA.
No. Well, there won't be. I mean, because Obama was doing what they all supported. They hate Netanyahu. That's a good point. I'm glad you remembered that. Hey, Suzanne, this is the 4th week in a row now where every caller gets a brand new iPhone 7 or iPhone 7 Plus. Would you like one?
Yes, I would actually. It would be for my husband. His birthday is Christmas Day.
Cool. Okay. 7 or 7 Plus?
7.
And what carrier?
Verizon, and we'll take any color. You
got it. Hang on, we'll get your address, and you'll have it tomorrow. But don't tell your husband. I know that. You're going to wait till Christmas Day to give it to him.
Yes, I am.
So is he not listening now?
He shouldn't be.
Good. We hope he's not. So, what kind of phone does he have now?
He has an iPhone 4.
iPhone 4. Okay. Just to give it a little heads up, he'll have to take this phone and make sure you keep it in the box. Take the new phone with the box and your current phone to the Verizon store to get the number moved because the SIM card in his iPhone 4 is too big for the new iPhone 7. It won't fit. So you'll tell them that the phone is unlocked, which the Verizon people will know, and that it's a gift. And they'll set you all up. So we'll send you a pretty one. And it'll have 256 gig. Apple just released iOS 10.2 today, which is big. So stand by. Mr. Sturdy will get your address here just a second. Welcome back, my friends. It's great to have you here. Such a pleasure. Know you're all out there. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Just got this in. White House in on this now. Ready for this? Josh Earnest, the White House press. In fact, before let me get back to the stacks of stuff here. Yes, sirree, Bob. Back on October. No, darn it, is this? It is. The Obama administration has defended the integrity of the presidential election despite fears of Russia attempting to undermine the vote. This is in the Hill.com on November 26th, my friends. For those of you in Rio Linda, it's about 3 weeks after the election was over. Again, Hill.com, going back here in time, the Obama administration has defended the integrity of the presidential election despite fears of Russia attempting to undermine the vote. A statement of confidence in the election as free and fair from a cybersecurity perspective came Friday as some liberal opponents of President-elect Trump pushed for recounts in 3 states. In its statement, the regime blasted Russian-directed hacking and release of emails from Democrat groups over the summer. But nevertheless, we stand behind our election results, which accurately reflect the will of the American people, said the statement from the White House. November 26th, the administration further said it was, quote, confident in the overall integrity of electoral infrastructure and that the elections were free and fair from a cybersecurity perspective. This is Barack Obama and his administration back on November 26th. That's not even a month ago. So they're defending the integrity. They're claiming that everything was fine and above board. The Russians did not succeed. And yet Obama is now ordering a review of Russian election-related hacking. So what are you to believe? Even this now has become politicized. And look how the wheel has turned. In the last debate between Hillary and Trump, when Chris Wallace asked Trump if he would abide by the election results, Trump said, I'll let you know when they happen. I'm going to wait and see what happens. And yeah, if everything's fine and dandy, then yeah, but I'm not going to commit to you today. And remember how Washington erupted at that Trump was undermining the integrity of elections, and this is just not done. And it's another example of this Rube Trump, this bull in a china shop, not knowing anything, on the verge here of destroying the sacred, sacrosanct American electoral system. Does he have no shame whatsoever? And now look. Hillary Clinton swearing she would abide by the results. And then even in her concession speech saying she was going to abide. But now look at the 180. Now guess who is it that's not accepting? Guess who is it that's trying to undermine? Guess who is it that's challenging the sanctity of American elections? Why, it's our good old buddies, Barack Obama and the Democrat Party on down. And today, Josh Earnest at the White House in the press briefing, a reporter said, does the White House have a position on if the Russians were attempting to interfere with the election, what their motives were? Was it to actually help elect Trump, or was it just to create chaos?
The president-elect didn't call it into question. He called on Russia to hack his opponent. He called on Russia to hack Secretary Clinton. So he certainly had a pretty good sense of whose side this activity was coming down on.
Are you kidding me?
The last several weeks of the election were focused on a discussion of emails that had been hacked and leaked by the Russians. These were emails from the DNC and John Podesta.
That has never been confirmed that Russia had these emails and leaked them. And Trump did not encourage Russia to hack Hillary. You know what this is? No, wait a minute. No, it's not that. It's not them just trying to help Hillary, save her, whatever. They're trying to overturn the election. You better take this seriously. They are trying to overthrow this election result. They are trying to delegitimize it. They are trying to get these electors out there pressured into not getting to 270 for Trump. Now, if that happens, it goes to the House, and the House would vote. But you don't know with McCain and Gramnesty up there trying to influence. They're in the Senate, I know. But this is about much more than just trying to protect Hillary's reputation for having humiliated legal. She's lost the election 3 times now in 8 years. This is an out and out lie. I mean, Trump didn't call for Hillary. For the Russians to hack Hillary. What this was hilarious, by the way. The question was being asked if the Russians had hacked, and where are Hillary's missing 33,000 emails? Do you remember? There were 33,000 emails of Hillary's that were missing, that she deleted, and then somebody came along. It was alluded during the campaign that somebody had them, and that WikiLeaks was going to be releasing them. And then a story came out that this Kim.com guy had them, or somebody had Hillary's 33,000. Trump was asked about it. He said maybe the Russians can find them. He was cracking a joke. Maybe the Russians can find her. And the reaction, these people in the Democrat Party, the media, left no sense of humor, folks, especially when the joke's on them. When you're making fun of what they do and say, when you mock them, they can't take it. They don't get it. They're not funny people anyway. They don't laugh and smile by nature. They're constantly scowling and running around in various degrees of outrage and angst and anger. So when Trump said maybe the Russians, it was a throwaway. It was brilliant. It was I remember laughing myself silly over it here. In fact, I even used the line in a little press release that was released announcing that I had agreed to do this for 4 more years. I said, I want to be on the air when the Russians find Hillary's emails. I want to make sure, and I still do. That's what Trump said. So here comes Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, claiming that Trump asked the Russians to hack Hillary's emails. That's how they distorted Trump's joke, his line. But again, ladies and gentlemen, remind you here of this November 26th story. Josh Earnest, the president-elect, didn't call it into question. He called on Russia to hack his opponent. He called on Russia to hack Secretary Clinton. He certainly had a pretty good sense of whose side this activity was coming down on. November 26, Obama administration defends vote integrity after hacking fears. Administration said it was confident the overall integrity of electoral infrastructure. The elections were free and fair from a cybersecurity perspective. Now, it may be that some of this is aimed at salvaging what little is left of Hillary's reputation, but don't make any mistake of what's really going on here. They are doing their best to destroy the Trump presidency before it begins so that it never has any legitimacy. I don't think they believe, don't misunderstand, I don't think they think that they can oust Trump as the president-elect. They don't think they can get Hillary elected. They would love if Trump didn't get to 270 in the Electoral College if they're able to intimidate enough electors. They would love that. They would love it if the House of Representatives has to elect Trump. Can you imagine the story then? Trump loses popular vote. Trump loses the Electoral College. And the Republican Party shamelessly installs him as president against the will of the voters anyway. And he starts out as totally illegitimate. That's what their objective here is. And whether or not you think they can pull it off is not the point. They are trying to, and it doesn't matter. The media is going to portray Trump as illegitimate anyway. That's what this is all setting up. The truth be damned, this is fake news for a purpose. And it's going to be up to Trump to continue to do what he has been doing and just going over their heads and continuing to tweet about them and exposing them as the frauds that they are, as the architects of fake news. But it's going to be an adversarial relationship because they're not going to stop till they get Trump impeached, folks. There isn't going to be any unity over this. There isn't going to be any kumbayas. There's not going to be a point in time where the Democrats are going to grow up and realize they lost, and it's time to start refocusing and looking at ways to win in 2018 and 2020. This is going to be all about destroying it. David Brock's already out there raising money for this express purpose. You see, Brock is now raising money for the Democrat version of Breitbart. They did the talk radio version of Rush Limbaugh and Air America, and it bombed royally. And then they spent a lot of time trying to create the Democrat version of Fox News, and MSNBC and CNN didn't work. And now Brock admits they're trying to create the Democrat version of Breitbart News. Wait a minute. I thought Breitbart News was bad. I thought Breitbart News was part of this white supremacy movement. Why would you want to replicate Breitbart News? These people are just all over it, but they've got one objective, folks. They lost. They can't come to grips with it. They're never going to come to grips with it. They're never going to accept that they were rejected because of their policies and who they are. They are going to tell themselves over and over again to the point that they believe it, that it was stolen from them. They'll come up with the most outrageous, egregious, humorous lies that nobody in their right mind would believe except they will. And they'll conduct their affairs accordingly. This election was stolen from them. The Russians hacked. You need to ask, what did the Russians hack? There are two things in a vote. You've got people that vote, you got people that count. What was hacked? Was the count hacked? Doesn't look like it because the recounts in these blue wall states hasn't gone well. Trump's ended up gaining votes. So I guess you want to say that the election was hacked on the ballot side, on the casting vote side, right? Is that what you want to say? So how did that happen? Not enough dead people in Chicago showed up? Too many dead people in California showed up? How does it work? But they're going to tell themselves this is all about discrediting and destroying. Look, folks, concentrated central power and being in charge of it in Washington is all these people know. There is no, crossing the aisle. These are the same people complaining about gridlock. Well, everything they claim that they want is just it's BS. These are the ultimate dividers. They do it on purpose. They're going to continue to, just mark my words. Mark my word. We'll be back and back to the phones when we get back here. Don't go away. Aventura, Florida. This is Francisco. Francisco, greetings and welcome to the EIB Network. How are you?
Pretty good. Good afternoon, Rush. How are you doing today?
Very well, sir. Thank you much for the call.
Okay. I have a real issue with all these things that the Democrats have been doing. I don't think they are taking in consideration at this point the kind of problem they could create. When he talks about the relationship of the United States with Russia, through history, there have been problems, the things that have to do with war and stuff like that started with a heck of a lot less than this. I think they should be a little bit measured. I cannot believe that they're going into doing something like this, accusing. We're not talking here about Guatemala or Venezuela. We're talking about Russia, for God's sake, and we are accusing a foreign power. Which
I really don't. I know what you're saying, Francisco. You're thinking that this haphazard talk, accusing and indicting the Russians, is really, it's unseemly and it's unprofessional and should not be occurring in public. It's the kind of anti-diplomacy that could cause the Russians to be publicly humiliated, get really, really mad, and then really, really go out and do something.
Yeah, and that's the problem. If somehow these people are able actually to take Donald Trump out of the way. And
well, you know what? Here's the thing. Francisco, what you're pointing out is this is actually a good point. The fact, you're right about that, and the fact that Democrats are doing it is proof that they do not really think the Russians did this.
Correct.
That is the dirty little secret is this whole thing is made up. They don't think the Russians did this.
Correct.
They wouldn't be doing this. Plus, don't worry, because Putin and Trump like each other. So if Putin gets mad, Trump will be able to talk him off the ledge. Send Tillerson over there.
I thank God for that, Rush.
Yeah, everything will be fine. Hey, look, you want a new iPhone 7 or iPhone 7 Plus, Francisco?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Who is your carrier? Who's your cell phone carrier?
AT&T.
AT&T. So do you want a big one or a small one, a 7 or a 7 Plus?
7 Plus.
7 Plus. Right on. So color-wise, I've got everything except... No, I think I have everything. What color do you want?
Black, if you have it.
All right, I've got it. So I want you to hang on. Apple just released iOS 10.2 today. It's a big release. It's got some new emoji, which matters a lot to people, strangely. But they do. It's got a new TV app that is awesome. It has the 3 new wallpapers. It's a whole bunch of stuff added to it. Your phone will need to be upgraded.
I thank you very much, Ross. Actually, I'm going to leave it to my daughter because today is her 14th birthday, so that's going to be her birthday present.
Well, now, in that case, maybe she'd want it, depending on how big her hands are, you can have either one you want, but she might want a small one.
You might be right.
No, I don't want to talk you out of anything. I'm just trying to be helpful. Most people, like I had somebody send back a Plus. It was just too big, which I don't understand. I think it's the best phone ever made in the world. But if she liked, does she use the phone now? She use it one-handed?
Yes, she uses the 5S.
She can't use this one-handed. If that's a big deal to her, the Plus will be too big.
Yep. Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. I'll tell you what. We'll send you a 7, and if she doesn't want this, she wants a bigger, let us know, we'll replace it. But in the meantime, hang on so Mr. Snerdley can get your address so we can have it out to you tomorrow. Back here in just a second, my friends. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. Sit. What is the 4th week or the 5th week? Whatever. I think it's the 4th week. Every caller is offered a brand new iPhone 7 or iPhone 7 Plus. And no, Apple doesn't give us these to give away. Apple doesn't give anybody anything. Even their employees have to buy, which with 150,000 employees, you can understand. At any rate, we've only got one big, exciting broadcast hour remain. I resent that I have to do this whole thing today, but I'm going to keep at it because I can't let them get away with it. No, I got a note from somebody who asked me, how did I convince Apple to give me all these phones? And Apple did, folks, these are from me. These are personal for me. It's all about sharing passions. It's Christmas time. It's fun. Spreading the goodwill. Anyway, greetings and welcome back. It's great to have you at 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And the email address, lrushbo at us.com. lrushbo at eibnet.us. That's what it is. lrushbo at eibnet.us. Just a little bit of explanation on this whole story. I deeply resent having to do this because it means I have to fall for the trap. This whole fake news story and this whole thing of the Russians hacking the poor Democrats, it's all fake, folks. Every bit of it is fake. And people are now lining up behind a fake story and calling for investigations into Russia and the election. It's all fake, and it's typical. It's classic, and that's why I resent having to fall for it. This has been, in large measure, what it has been like to be a conservative for my adult life. Every day you get up, and the left is on the march, destroying things you believe in, attacking things you believe in, destroying people, attacking people you believe in. And you have to take time to defend those things, particularly if they're institutions like marriage or other cultural rot that the left is actually responsible for. If you want to stand up and defend it, you have to do it. And they're attacking every day. And then they try to destroy people that you love, people that you like. And you have to defend that. And that's what this is. It's just except now the target is Trump and everybody that voted for Trump. And the objective is to delegitimize this election and delegitimize the results so that Trump's presidency is not legitimate, so that they can stop Trump from implementing his agenda. That's the objective here. The real objective is to get Trump thrown out of office. The real objective is setting up impeachment. Make no mistake about this, folks. Make no mistake about this whatsoever. All of this, they're holding out maybe a grain of hope. They could actually pull something out of their hat with this electoral college vote on the 19th, 1 week from today. I mean, running op-eds by electors, Republican electors who just can't bring themselves to vote for Trump because he's such a mean person. Oh, my God, I don't know. I would even violate the law. And then pressuring other electors and threatening them to do the same thing. Would love if they could get it. Trump not get his 306 that he's got. Maybe not even get 270. They can't get Hillary to 270, although they wouldn't. I don't think they would stop at trying. But what they really are hoping is that Trump doesn't get to 270, which means the election goes to the House. And the Republicans in the House would elect Trump, and it would be over. But that wouldn't be the story. The story would be Trump lost the popular vote, Trump lost the Electoral College, and somehow ended up president. Why, we've just been screwed. And that's the narrative for 4 years, or however long it takes them to impeach Trump. Make no mistake about any of this. They know they lost the election. They know they're not going to win any elections anytime soon. They've just been shellacked at the state and local level. They don't have a presidential bench. They've got Joe Biden. I mean, they really have the idea of winning elections is something that they're going to lose the Supreme Court, and that was crucial to them to continue the cultural rot that they had been engaged in and sponsoring. So this is all they know. This has been the modus operandi of the Democrat Party. It's not advance the nation and build people and grow the economy and grow anything. It's not. There's nothing positive in it. There's nothing uplifting about it. Everything with them is dire consequences, doom and gloom. Everybody's a victim of something. Everybody's getting screwed by something. Everybody's getting screwed by somebody. Everybody's getting savage. Nobody's getting a fair treatment. Nobody's getting a fair shake except the rich and the enemies of the Democrats. And the strategy that they use is to destroy their opponents, not build up themselves. And they're going to continue doing this because it's all they know. They're even fundraising to set up new organizations to keep this strategy and these tactics underway. As I say, the one big difference here is that this is not your usual Republican that they're trying to take out. This is Donald Trump. And Trump has to be learning more and more every day who his liberal New York friends really are now and who other liberal people are. He's getting a first-hand seat, front row seat, at who these people really are and who they have always been. I have no doubt in my mind what their objective is. And this fake news story about Russia hacking, the way it started, the way it got picked up, the way it's been amplified now, I just resent having to come in here and defend it. So I've decided to go about it a different way. Instead of defend it, I'm attacking them and their motives and their facts and their agenda. Because I figured we don't need defending. No, we didn't do anything here except win an election. And that doesn't need to be defended. It doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be acted upon. It needs to be realized. It needs to be confirmed, affirmed, and built upon. In the old days, the Republicans, after they won elections and the Democrats acted this way, the Republicans would cave and extend the hand of friendship, like giving them an extra vote in the Senate so things would be fair and equal, or any number of other similar type things, to try to prove that they were cooperative and could work together and make Washington work. And it just led to disaster. That hopefully will not be the situation here. I want to remind people we were the first. This program was the first to actually make big news out of this. When the Soviet Union imploded, when the Berlin Wall came down and Soviet communism came to a screeching halt, communism did not. Soviet communism did. But communism didn't lose anything. Communism just kept right on going. They found a new home in the environmental movement, and they've been off to the races. We have been laboring, many people have been laboring under a misconception that with the fall of Soviet communism, we also saw the defeat of communism in general, and we didn't, and we haven't. The Soviet Union as a nation ceased to exist, but now Putin is back, and he's KGB, and he's doing what he can to put it back together in a different. He doesn't ever want it called communist, but he does want an all-powerful Mother Russia with a bunch of satellite states and so forth. Back in the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan was president, the Soviet Union was loved and adored by the Democrat Party. And I am not exaggerating. That is not an exaggeration, and I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm just telling you factually. They did not trust Reagan. The Democrats in this country thought Reagan was the great threat, just like they now think Trump is, and like they thought Bush was. Reagan was a dangerous, stupid idiot who was living in oblivion, taking naps all day long, making jokes about bombing Russia and so forth, bombing the Soviets. And the Democrats really believed that the world was threatened by Reagan being the president, and so they sought counsel with Soviet leaders. We found out about this. After the Soviet Union imploded, it resulted in a lot of things. And one of the things that happened is a bunch of KGB files ended up being released, opened up, and it was a treasure trove of discovery. Boris Yeltsin in 1991 saw to it that everything the KGB had been doing was revealed, because back in those days, the new leaders of Russia didn't want to have anything to do with the old Soviet communist regime, and they didn't want anybody thinking that there was any remaining linkage. So a program of transparency erupted, and Boris Yeltsin just opened up everything. And one of the interesting items found was a memorandum addressed to the then top man in the USSR, Yuri Andropov. The memo was written by Viktor Chebrekov, who was the top man at the KGB. The subject of the memo from the top man of the KGB to Yuri Andropov of the Soviet Union was Senator Edward Kennedy on 9 and 10 May of this year. Senator Edward Kennedy's close friend and trusted confidant, John Tunney, was in Moscow. Tunney was Kennedy's law school roommate and a former Democrat senator from California. And Tunney was one of these guys, Chris Dodd, that run around, waitresses end up being in sandwiches between one of the two guys at restaurants in Washington, D.C. But Tunney and Kennedy were tight. And Senator Kennedy asked Senator Tunney to convey a message to Yuri Andropov. The message was simple. Kennedy proposed that the United States would lend Andropov a hand in dealing with this out-of-control cowboy Ronald Reagan. In return, Andropov would lend the Democrat Party a hand in challenging Reagan in the 1984 presidential election. We brought this to your attention 7 years ago. I've mentioned it several times since then, but it's worth reminding all of you, since it's being totally ignored by the drive-by media, and it always has been ignored. The drive-bys have never told this story. It was August 27, 2009, where I first discussed this. When I first learned of it, essentially, Kennedy, through Tunney and other intermediaries, was sending memos and communiques to the president of the Soviet Union, the chairman of the Communist Party, Yuri Andropov at the time, asking him to be patient and don't overreact to Reagan, that Reagan doesn't know what he's doing. He's a cowboy. Work with us, Kennedy said. And we'll be, with your help, we can get rid of Reagan in 1984. Ted Kennedy actually sought the assistance of the Soviet Union in 1984 in defeating Ronald Reagan in the election. In other words, what I'm telling you is, and it's in the KGB files, I'm not even expanding what this is. Ted Kennedy was asking for Yuri Andropov's assistance in the form of interference in the presidential election of 1984. The memo said the only real potential threats to Reagan are problems of war and peace and Soviet-American relations. These issues, according to Senator Kennedy, will without a doubt become the most important of the election campaign. Kennedy made Yuri Andropov a couple of specific offers. He first offered to visit Moscow. Main purpose of that meeting, according to Tunney, would be to arm Soviet officials with explanations regarding problems of nuclear disarmament so that they would be better prepared and more convincing during appearances in the U.S. In other words, Kennedy was offering the Russians, the Soviets, assistance in resisting Reagan's proposals on nuclear disarmament. Ted Kennedy and the Democrat Party, let me just cut to the chase, were undermining a sitting United States president and planning on the Soviet Union assisting in the election in 1984. The way that was going to happen, they wanted the Soviets to be totally uncooperative. They wanted the Soviets to talk about Reagan and to react to Reagan as though he was a dangerous threat to mankind, to portray Reagan's proposals as inhumane and uncivil and just unacceptable and indecipherable. That was the plan, the assistance of the Soviet Union in the 1984 election as devised by Ted Kennedy. Because remember now, the Democrats were singing the praises of the Soviet Union in all ways. As a superpower, as a counterbalance to the United States' status as a superpower. Back in 1984, the Soviet Union was establishing beachheads in places like Nicaragua with the full aid and support of Democrats in the House and Senate. Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua would come to New York and be taken on shopping sprees by Peter, Paul, and Mary, and that would end up being in the news. And that was to portray him as a wonderful guy. Why, look, he loves Peter, Paul, and Mary. And Peter, Paul, and Mary, Puff the Magic Dragon, they like Ortega. The whole thing was designed to undermine Reagan as some madman and to convince the American people the only way that the Soviets could be trusted not to launch a weapon against us was to get Reagan out of office. And here that same party is today with a cock and bull story about some sort of computer hacking that the Russians are engaging in to undermine the worst candidate the Democrat Party has ever put forward in my lifetime, and that would be Hillary Rodham. No worse candidate could they find, a two-time loser who has just rendered a three-time loser in these recounts. A woman who is so colorless, if it weren't for her varicose veins, nobody would notice her. Well, you don't see those either because of the pantsuits. A horrible candidate who called half the country deplorables. A woman who had no agenda. She's running against Donald Trump and thinking nobody's going to vote for Trump. Trump's a madman. She didn't even campaign. She didn't even go to Wisconsin and Michigan, some of these states. So in the bag did they think. She wouldn't even go on campaign rallies because she couldn't draw flies to them. Her only agenda was trust me. I'm competent. I know Washington. I love the children. What have you done for children? I've been working with the Children's Defense Fund for 30 years. What have you done for children? Where's the endless parade of adults who survived childhood because of you? Where is this endless parade of people who give you credit for whatever it is they've become? Zero, zilch, nada. Hillary Clinton has been an entitled queen in her mind ever since she arrived in Washington, and maybe even prior to that. The most cheated on woman in America. She had no business winning this election. Everything that was supposed to happen did. She was not a good candidate. She was not attractive. She was not appealing. She was not engaging. She didn't have any charisma. She couldn't draw flies. Everything worked out as it should have. And they can't accept it. I got to take a break. We'll be back with much more straight ahead. Don't go away. Okay, here's how ridiculous this is getting. TheHill.com, 10 electors have requested an intelligence briefing before voting a week from today. 10 electors in the Electoral College have asked for an intelligence briefing on this so-called hacking of the Russians, hacking by the Russians of our. Now, anybody think that these 10 electors just sitting out there minding their own business and reading the news and said, you know what? I think we need a briefing ourselves. What a crack. These electors have been found by the Democrat Party and the media, and this story has been created. I don't deny the electors are asking for the intel. It's who put them up to it. Because they didn't arrive at this themselves. That's the electors. It's like a jury wanting something read back before they render. There's no question here what they have to do. It's all aimed at making as many people think they made a mistake voting for Trump, and therefore Trump's election victory is actually fraudulent. And that would form the basis for Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats, opposing Trump on everything as the remedy for this travesty that took place during what's the travesty? That the Democrat Party was defeated. That's the travesty. That's just unacceptable. That's not supposed to happen, and everybody's going to pay the price now. That's their thinking. That's what they want to happen. A couple of, actually, 3 stories. 4. I have to mention these. I'm not going to get into them in detail like I want. I'll save them for tomorrow. Headline: Bipartisan Senate Group calls for probe of Russian hacking in U.S. bipartisan. That's it's three people. It's Chuck Schumer, Lindsey Graham, and John. It's actually four. Jack Reed of Rhode Island. 4 people. And the headline, bipartisan Senate group calls for probe of Russian. 4 senators. I'll tell you what I think's going on, folks. In fact, I don't think it. I know it. I think that people who live and work in Washington are just numbed. I think they are flabbergasted. I think they are gobsmacked. I don't think they've come to grips with what's happened here. It is such a big deal that an outsider has come in and is going to run that show. I cannot emphasize enough what an absolute shock this is to these people. They are terrified. Not just the fact that Trump's an outsider, but listening to him say what he says, looking at his cabinet and imagining what he's going to do. They're thinking that he's going to dismantle everything that defines who they are. He's going to dismantle everything that produces their standard of living. They are shell-shocked, they are paranoid, and they are scared to death. Members of both parties. This is a closed club, this establishment, this collection of elites. Nobody gets in this club. Nobody does anything like this ever, except that it's happened. And Trump's cabinet does not consist of people from this group. Not yet, anyway. And I think they're terrified. And they are also would be happy to join this so-called investigation of Russian hack. They'd be thrilled if they could neuter Trump. From the Politico, Intel world struggles to crack the code of an untrusting Trump. Subheadline, how do you brief a president who refuses to believe what you tell him? This is another story, specifically about the intelligence community, that I think reflects the fear that, can I translate this for you? We are in Department A. We're in the intel community. We're at the FDA. We're at the EPA. We have always gotten away with telling the president whatever. But we may not be able to fool Trump. We may not be able to get away. Trump may look at us too carefully. Trump may be paying too much attention to us. How do you brief a president who refuses to believe what you tell him? Subheadline to that is, oh my God, we're not going to continue to be able to fudge things? I'm telling you, there is abject, I believe, this is, talk to nobody, it's just my personal assessment of all this. I think I'm looking at abject panic. I know I am in the Democrat Party. Abject panic. Childlike fright. First time in the House of Mirrors at the horror show at the State Fair. All they see is themselves, and they're scared to death. And then there's Trump looking at them everywhere they turn in there. And then there's this from Politico. Democrats fear another Trump trouncing. Leaderless and lacking any strategy. Top Democrat officials worry they're not ready for Trump's first 100 days. This, by the way, as a little aside, this story is exactly why Trump's instinct to move very, 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 very fast is right on the money. The Democrats are in total disarray. There's no one in charge except the New York Times and the Washington Post. The New York Times, Washington Post are running a Democrat Party. The New York Times, Washington Post are running the Democrat Party opposition. The Democrat Party itself is itself gobsmacked. Don't know what to do. Trump has just got to keep up this pace. They still don't know what's hit them. They have no way to oppose him other than to try to convince people he's illegitimate. That's the only thing they've got. And that's what the media is trying to do. New York Times, Washington Post, all the associated networks, Politico, NBC, doing their best to tell people Trump cheated, the Russians cheated, Trump's illegitimate, Hillary won the popular vote. They have nothing to say for themselves. They have no reason. They have nothing to say to the American people. You should have us leading you because. They've got no answer. They have no way to finish that sentence. Everything they've been doing the last 8 years has brought about abject misery and failure. The only thing they've got in their arsenal is to stop Trump's success by labeling him as illegitimate. And if he just keeps up this pace, he's going to run rings around him. And I hope he does. And I hope he continues to run rings around the New York Times, the Washington Post. And the next headline says it all. Washington Post, this is 4 days ago. American dream collapsing for young adults, study says. The American dream is collapsing for a lot of people. Young adults, yeah. The millennials, yeah. It's collapsing because they've been lied to that there is no American dream. They've been told it's over. They've been told America's greatest days were back there. They've been told get used to a country in decline. Of course they think the American dream's collapsing. The Democrats are scared to death. Trump's going to show how it hasn't. The Democrats, the New York Times, and Washington Post are scared to death that Trump is going to illustrate that the Democrat Party is why this country's in decline, not America. It's not America's fault. It's not our founding's fault. It's the Democrat Party that is the reason why this nation is stagnant and in decline. And the Democrats are living in day-to-day paranoia that is going to be exposed. Don't doubt me. Kathy in Gilbert, Arizona, great to have you with us. How you doing?
Hi, Rush. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
If the CIA found footprints of hacking the election, why did they not find hacking footprints on Hillary's emails?
Well, there's some confusion about that. I've got a story in the stack that Comey says that they did find evidence that Hillary had been hacked. I say that, and now I can't find it in my memory on this, is confusing. But the point of your question is, why would the Russians leave fingerprints if they hacked?
Especially when it comes to the election.
Why would they do it? If you can avoid leaving fingerprints, why this time? We assume the Russians and the Chi-Coms are hacking everybody they're trying to all the time. It's now part of cyber warfare. It goes on nation to nation. We hack them too. But you don't leave fingerprints around.
That's right.
If Russian fingerprints were on these hacks of the DNC computers, then obviously somebody else put them there. I like what John Bolton said. I really like what Bolton said. Bolton said, you know what? This could have come from the Obama administration, trying to make it look like the Russians. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get into, well, why? That opens a whole other can of worms and doors and so forth. But I think this is fake news, Kathy. I think we're all being sucked in. Well, I'm not, obviously, but many people are being sucked in. I hope not very many, actually. I hope this ends up backfiring, but they're going to give it their best shot. They're not going to let go of this story for...
I just feel that this story is hard to believe. It's got to be fake because it's just unbelievable. The timing is too curious, and it's just too helpful for what we already know the media narrative is, that Trump didn't win fairly. And I think there's every reason for sensible people to doubt this. Okay, your turn. iPhone 7 or 7 Plus? iPhone 7, please.
7. Who's your carrier?
AT&T.
AT&T. Cool. So you can ask for any color, and I'll be able to satisfy your desire.
Do you have silver?
Oh, I do.
Oh, thank you.
I've got a silver iPhone 7 with your name on it. Hang on, so Mr. Snerdley, and get your address. Up next is, let me see, Panama City, Florida. Steve, you're next. I've got a little over a minute, so try to get in, get it, and get out.
Honor and a pleasure to speak to you.
You bet, sir.
I've heard rumors. I don't know if it's fake news. I think this is real news. What Obama's going to do, he's rented a house, bought a house in Washington, is set up some kind of networking, TV, etc., to try to get the Democratic Party out of the shambles. For your insight on it, he's going to use social networking, Twitter, Facebook.
Well, now, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but I have heard that Obama wants to establish a quasi-media network to assist in his efforts to preserve the greatness of his legacy and his regime. I do know that Obama's not going anywhere. He's going to stay in Washington under the guise of his little girls finishing school there, so they won't have to be uprooted. No, Trump is going to have them coming at him from every direction. And you're probably on to something. Okay, quickly, iPhone 7 or 7 Plus, and what's your carrier?
7 Plus, AT&T.
AT&T, okay. Do you have a color preference?
Rose gold.
Rose gold. You got it. Don't hang up. Mr. Snerdley soon will get your FedEx address. We will be right back. Sit tight. Man, I do not know where the time goes. All I know is we get more squeeze-zoomed into these 3 hours than most people get squeeze-zoomed into a week. And there's tomorrow. I got some great audio sound bites from Obama about me that I didn't get to today, but I'll make sure I do esta mañana.